We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. It's a Split Zone Duo subscriber special. Back with us this week is Rodger Sherman, along with me, Alex Kirshner, and my co-host, Richard Johnson. Rodger, we're fully into coach firing season. It seems to just come earlier and earlier. There are currently a lot of FBS teams, by my count, 5 of them already operating with head coaches who were not supposed to be their head coach this year. And so we thought it might be a great time for you, a connoisseur of the interim coach, to dive a little bit deep for us into one of the odder jobs in college football, which is being an interim head coach.
Yeah, we have 5 interim coaches. 3 of them are obviously Power 5 head coaches who have taken over this year. And I don't know, it's just such a fascinating job to me in that, like, I try to think about what it must be like to be the person who has that role and like actually think about it. It's like, on the one hand, it's kind of a huge professional honor. Like, you get to be the head coach of a Power 5 football program or an FBS football program. You know, that's the type of thing you put on your resume. It's like the pinnacle of your career. But also, it's like you were just on the staff of a guy that was so bad that the guy who hired you got fired. And that person is probably a professional mentor of some sort, or just someone that you've been close with, and they just lost their job. You know, it's a chance to show the world what you can do as a head coach. At the same time, you probably can't shake things up that much. It's like, you know, turning around a freighter in the ocean. Like, it's to change a team's strategies mid-year. You're kind of stuck with the decisions of the last guy. And like, it's just this big chance for you to, you know, really lead a program. But at the same time, people are kind of tuned out on the season already. Your players are thinking about transferring. You know that you're not going to be coaching here next year unless something really wild happens. It's such a strange spot for these guys. And I just spend a lot of time thinking about what it must be like for them and why teams choose the people they do to lead their program in these strange moments.
They are strange moments. And so, Rodger, tell me what you've learned, what you think you're onto about how college football teams decide on who are going to be these caretakers.
Yeah, so I've studied a short history of interims. Like I said, right now we have 5 of them. We also have, I believe, 7 coaches who are currently FBS head coaches who were promoted from having an interim job, which is honestly higher than I expected. We got Dabo at Clemson, Ryan Day at Ohio State, Brent Key at Georgia Tech, Blake Harrell at ECU last year, Spencer Danielson at Boise State, David Braun at Northwestern, kind of Brian Smith at Ohio, but he only coached one game as an interim last year, I think the bowl game. Sharon Moore at Michigan. So like a pretty high amount of coaches use this as their entryway to being head football coaches. Also, we have 3 coaches who there are probably more, but 3 coaches that I could think of who are now at a second job, who got their first job as an interim head coach. Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina, Jake Dickert at Washington State, and Clay Helton at USC, who are now coaches elsewhere. So it kind of is a pathway to becoming a head coach. And that still only seems to represent, though, a kind of small fraction of the types of guys who become interim head coaches. Because sometimes you want someone who's young and coming up in their career, and if you've got a lot of season left, you want it to be someone who can do a good job, especially if you're hiring someone before the season, or especially if you fire your coach before the season, you're going to want an interim who has a pretty good read on things and can do a pretty good job if you're making that change in the off season or like 1 or 2 games in. if it's towards the end of the season, you might just want to, finish out what's going on, not mess things up too much. You might think about wanting to prioritize keeping your team's recruits. Sometimes teams want to change a lot, and sometimes teams want to change a little, and it affects the type of guys that they bring in.
I think this first section is interesting because Ryan Day, I don't really count. Because remember, Ryan Day had coached like 4 games or whatever it was that year.
It was during the suspension.
Yeah, during the suspension. So Ryan Day had coached. And I think Ryan Day was like sort of the coach in waiting that everybody understood. Like if they didn't hire Ryan Day, you were going to be like, what? There's going to be a lot more going on there. The Dabo one is, and I think we're going to talk Dabo a little bit later. Or do we want to talk Dabo now?
Talk about him now.
Well, the Dabo thing is fascinating because when Tommy Bowden was fired and Dabo was given the job, it actually could have gone to Billy Napier, which is a really weird, like sliding doors moment. But as the story goes, it was one of the two of them. It was Dabo, and then obviously you see what Dabo's done with it. Spencer Danielson, I think, is the most interesting on this list because Spencer Danielson is the one that I never thought was going to get the job. Because you remember Danielson, God, Alex, what was it? He hired Dirk Cutter as his offensive coordinator?
Well, Andy, and so Andy Avalos had been the head coach. Or
Andy Avalos is hired, yeah.
And had brought in Dirk Cutter, former Boise guy, as sort of an offensive, like, assistant consultant type thing. And I think people were pinpointing him as the guy who would move into the best bedroom after Avalos was gone.
And Boise State I don't remember. I think they were doing okay that season when they fired Avalos, and then they end up winning the Mountain West. Turns out giving the ball to Ashton Jeanty, good idea. And then year one with Danielson as the head coach, full on, they make the playoff. But it didn't seem like, he changed too much when he took over and happened to inherit a pretty good situation, and they just wanted to keep things rolling.
Did the other one on here, Rodger, when it happened at Northwestern, when all that happened, was David Braun the odds-on favorite? Was he the only person who could get the job? It was July.
So it was also kind of an interesting scenario where he was the new offensive coordinator at Northwestern, and therefore the one person who everybody knew would not be implicated in the hazing scandal.
Okay.
So if they had put someone else in charge, then a couple of weeks later, it might come out that they knew about the hazing, and then you have to fire them too. So he kind of slid into it, and then that season went great. They won a bowl game. No one was expecting that team to be good at all, especially with that overturn in the offseason. So he gets promoted to interim, he gets promoted from interim to the head coach. And Brent Key, obviously at Georgia Tech, has been a big hit.
Smashing success. An absolute smashing success. Congratulations to them.
And it was the type of thing where when they promoted him, you were like thinking,
what are they doing? Yeah. Yes, I remember thinking that. I remember thinking, are you sure about that?
And we currently have right now, I didn't run down the people who are the interim coaches right now. Stanford obviously went with Frank Reich. That's just going to be a 1-year deal. Kent State made the change in the offseason. They went with Mark Carney, same name as the Canadian Prime Minister, which is odd. You'd think maybe he might have a chance at the job because they don't look as bad as you might have expected them to be, although they're still quite bad. And they're
the Kent State head coaching job, not the Canadian Prime Ministership.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Specifically speaking. Yeah.
They did give Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney the full-time job. He was elected.
Sure, he actually was an interim as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it was like he took over after Trudeau. I think resigned or stepped down.
Yeah.
At UCLA, Tim Skipper, who was also the interim head coach at Fresno State and the acting head coach, as Jeff Tedford had health issues the last couple of years. At Virginia Tech, they have Philip Montgomery, who is a former head coach at Tulsa. And at Oklahoma State, they're going with Doug Meacham, who's been an offensive coordinator around Big 12 country for quite some time.
Yeah, Doug Meacham is a real, remember some guys assistant coach name. He might be to the Big 12 what Kurt Sharaka is to the Big Ten, or one of those types of guys, or what Jed Fish used to be?
So I'm going to break down the different types of interim coach, and the type of guy you call on really tells you a lot about what type of season you're going to try to have. And it's weird because like you might think this job just goes to the most senior person on your staff. You might think it goes to the person who is the best coach, has the best ideas. It tends to go to different things on what you need at a certain point of time. And it's just interesting what the responsibilities actually required of that job entail and why you choose who you choose. The first type of coach you might hire is the special teams coach. This is kind of an NFL special. Whenever an NFL teams fire their head coach, they like 40% of the time they just make the special teams coordinator.
Is it actually 40% of the time?
I don't have the actual numbers, but in the last 3 years, 3 of the guys who have been fired mid-season, they ended up going with the special teams coach. There was Darren Rizzi last year, the Rizzler with the New Orleans Saints, Chris Tabor when Matt Rule got fired with the Panthers, and Rich Bisaccia with the Raiders. It's just like kind of interesting because if you were to tab a position coach, like if all of a sudden put your linebackers coach in charge of the team, that takes away from their ability to do that responsibility. Whereas the special teams coordinator kind of doesn't have a position group during the game, and it's a managerial job, and is allowed to it allows him to kind of step into that role and take charge from there without really messing up the flow of your offense or your defense.
I talked to a coach who used to work with Joe Judge, who came from special teams and became the head coach for a minute of the Giants. Didn't go very well.
Look up where he is now.
Oh my goodness. Where is he now?
I believe he is the quarterback's coach at Ole Miss.
Miss. Yeah. He had a run at the UMass job is what it was.
Which, by the way, like I would normally make fun of them for this, but hey, shout out to Joe Judge. Like Trinidad Chambliss, Division II quarterback coming up to. I'm not sure how responsible he is for that at all, but hey, that's a surprise. Anyway, tell me more about Joe Judge.
We were talking about Judge's doomed Giants tenure and how Judge had come up for other coaching jobs. He was in it for Mississippi State, I think, after Leach passed, or maybe even before. I don't remember the exact year. He was in it for the UMass thing, whatever. And
Southern Miss too.
So I was talking about why is a special teams coach being looked at? And I think there's a general reason why special teams coaches are looked at, which is that they're organizers. Like special teams is really about organizing stuff. It's about pulling people who are doing other things and getting them to, often with less practice time, to be engaged and good and to follow their assignments on special teams. But I think in the time of an interim coach, and this is just me kind of editorializing off of that conversation, there might be a nice Switzerland thing going on where it's a time of upheaval and the special teams coach is not generally seen as having an agenda in favor of the offense or the defense. You know, if you promote the offensive coordinator to an interim head coach, that is maybe disrupting your offense and also maybe seeing something about how you see your defense. But if you take a guy from the special teams coordinator job and you move him to interim head coach, then you're disrupting what is very much an important phase of the game, but generally less important than offense and defense. It's just true because there's fewer plays in the game. And it's a bit like establishing a unity government in a time of upheaval when you put the special teamer in charge of the team.
The biggest thing I think an interim coach, or my favorite type of interim coach, is there's just such a vibesman element to being the interim coach. Like it is so vibes based. Like you remember, and I don't know if he's on this list. We'll talk about it. You remember when Cadillac was interim for Auburn?
Oh, he's on this list.
That was that's proper vibesman stuff. You guys remember when? And here's the other thing. There's also a quiet part out loud thing about interim coach. You guys remember when Jeff Saturday was the Colts interim head coach?
Oh my God, that's one of the funniest things ever to happen.
They went 1-7 that year, or that year when he was interim.
they had some embarrassing, humiliating losses with him in charge too.
Yeah. It was like, first of all, it was like, okay, the job is difficult, but like, you just can't throw any guy in it kind of situation. Like, you do have to have some semblance of know how to do it. They threw Jeff Saturday in it, for instance, and it did not go terribly well.
Like I saw some stats on this that were like kind of disturbing, is that the like disproportionately in comparison to the number of black full-time head coaches, there are a lot of black coaches who get promoted to be interim head coaches. These are stats from the Front Porch on Substack. It's Craig Meyer from USA Today's Substack.
Good writer.
He ran these numbers in 2023. 11% of Power 5 head coaches full-time are black. However, 37% of interim coaches over the previous decade were black coaches who were promoted to the interim job. However,
wonder why.
Of the 39 white coaches who were chosen to be an interim head coach, 13 of them, fully a third of them, eventually got a full-time head coaching job somewhere in the FBS. Whereas of the 23 black interim head coaches, the only one in that time frame who eventually got a head coaching job was Mike Loxley, who was the interim at Maryland and then became the head coach at Maryland.
But
there
later.
have been a few.
But after
later.
the fact, yeah.